Hi class. Okay, for this next lesson, I want everyone to go ahead and get out their science journals. Once you turn to the next available page, go ahead and make your KWL chart. Make 2 lines to give you 3 equal sections and label them K for no, W for wonder, and L for learned. Go ahead and give a second and do that. Now that everyone has their KWL chart made, I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys a few questions. And I want you to write down if you know the answers in the K, if you wonder about the answers in the W. So, what is a natural resource? What is the difference between renewable and non-renewable resources? Do you know what the 3 R's in conservation are? And what are some examples of items that can be recycled? So I want everyone to go ahead and take a minute and write those answers down. Once you have those down on your KWL chart, turn to a partner next to you and share your ideas. Great ideas. As I was walking around, I could hear you guys having great discussions about what you know and what you wonder about those questions. So now, we're going to go ahead and watch a YouTube video about renewable and non-renewable resources. While we're watching, I really want everyone to pay attention and be able to write in their KWL chart while you're learning things and if something comes up that you wonder about. So, whenever we're watching the video, afterwards, I want everyone to have at least 5 things written down in the L section of their chart. And I want you guys to really listen because this video is going to give some definitions of certain words that we're going to use throughout our lesson today. So if you hear those definitions, try to write them down while you're listening. So let's go ahead and start the YouTube video. Great job taking notes during the video. As I was walking around, I did notice everyone had at least 5 things written down in the L. So I want you to turn to a partner next to you, or you can share at the small group at your table and discuss some of the things that you learned from the video. And if someone wrote something that you didn't get down, just go ahead and write it down on your paper too. So let's take a couple minutes and just share your ideas with each other. Great job sharing. So for this next activity, I want everyone to turn to the next available page in their science journal. What we're about to do, you're going to need to listen very carefully because it has quite a few instructions. So first thing I want you to do is on your sheet of paper in your science journal, go ahead and make a chart similar to our KWL chart. So 2 lines, 3 equal sections. In the first section, it's going to be labeled object. The middle section is going to be labeled renewable or non-renewable resource. And the last section will be labeled picture. So for this activity, we're actually going to go outside and do a nature walk around the schoolyard. What I really want us to pay attention to is if we can find examples in our community of renewable and non-renewable resources. I want you to think back to the video that we just watched and really think about what you saw in the video. What were some examples that the video mentioned of renewable and non-renewable resources? And if you can find any of those examples in real life while we're walking around the yard. So, all we're going to need to go outside is going to be our science journal and a pencil. And while we are out there, we'll take a couple minutes and we'll really take our time to look around outside and see if we can find any of those examples. While we're outside though, I really just want you to focus on writing down the name of the object and whether or not it is a renewable or non-renewable resource. We'll do the pictures whenever we come back into the classroom, so that way we can really get as much of those items onto our papers as possible. I want you to also try to find at least 3 non-renewable resource examples and 5 renewable resource examples. So let's go ahead and line up at the door. Again, we only need our science journal and a pencil. So now that we're outside, I want to ask you guys a couple questions just to think about while you're out here and writing down in your journals. What examples of renewable resources do you see out here? What examples of non-renewable resources do you see out here? Are there any examples from the video that you can find outside around us? Or are there any examples that weren't shown in the video that you now see outside in our community? And I really want you to think about this one. Why is it important for us to be able to recognize these resources around us? So take a minute, talk to someone next to you, and keep writing down objects that you're seeing outside here in your journals. So now what I want you to do is turn to a partner and think about these questions that I'm about to ask you. Why is it important to conserve renewable and non-renewable resources? Think about that. Why is conservation important? What do you predict would happen if our non-renewable resources were no longer available? So look around you and think about the objects that you wrote down in non-renewable resources. What if those resources were no longer available to us? What do you think would happen? And lastly, what are some ways that you can help conserve resources? So think about those questions and turn to a partner and go ahead and share some ideas and take a couple minutes to do that. Great job sharing, everybody. So now we're gonna go ahead and head back inside. And once we get inside, I want you all to take a couple minutes to draw your pictures of the resources that you found from outside. You can take some time, draw them, and color them once we get back inside the classroom. So now that we're all finished with our nature walk charts, I want us to move more into talking about conservation. So go ahead and turn with your group members and think about the following questions. What does it mean to recycle? What are some ways that you reduce the amount of waste in your life? And what are some consequences of not conserving Earth's natural resources? So we talked a little bit about this while we were outside looking at the objects around us, but now I want us to really think about those consequences that could happen if we didn't conserve. So think about that and share with your group members for just a couple minutes. Great discussion, everybody. So now I want us to go ahead and listen to this read aloud of a book called The Adventures of a Plastic Bottle, a story about recycling. And this book is by Allison Inches. So let's go ahead and read the book together. In this book, we were able to learn quite a bit about reusing, reducing, recycling, and the consequences if that doesn't happen in our lives. So what I want you to do is turn back to your KWL chart and write a couple of things that you learned from this book. Talk about the 3 R's and why you think it is particularly important to recycle and how you can start doing it in your daily life. So let's take a minute, turn back to our KWL charts, and go ahead and do that. Great job writing in your KWL charts. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is our next activity. I need everyone to line up nice and neatly the way that we always do to get our Chromebooks. Everyone is going to get their Chromebook and carry it back to their desk, and we need to be very careful always with our Chromebooks. And what we're going to do is open up a Word document to create a brochure. So for this brochure, it's going to have a few different requirements on there. And we are going to be submitting these brochures to Google Classroom. So whenever you are working on it, please make sure it's really nice and neat and it's going to be good for me to grade. So a couple of things that we need to include in our brochures is going to be an informative title. And these brochures are going to be all about things that we've learned for renewable and non-renewable resources, conservation, and recycling. So I need an informative title on the front, and of course you can add a picture there on the front. And then you're going to need 3 examples of renewable and non-renewable resources. So I know that we collected a lot of data while we were outside looking around on our nature walk. So feel free to use those objects that you found outside, and you only need 3. I know some of you gathered more than 3 objects, so minimum of 3, and I want a picture by each of them. So you can upload a picture by taking a picture with your Chromebook of the drawing that you did on your chart, or you can find a clip art picture online. So it needs to be 3 examples of each as well as a picture. And the next thing is going to be the definition of the 3 R's, so reuse, reduce, and recycle. And along with those definitions, I want you to say at least 1 sentence of how people can incorporate the 3 R's into their daily lives. The next thing is going to be 1 to 2 paragraphs explaining the importance of conservation of Earth's resources and why people should care about conservation and recycling. So that needs to be 1 to 2 paragraphs with full and complete sentences. And again, these brochures will be turned in, so Please make sure you get this done in a timely manner and submit it up into Google Classroom. Great job submitting your brochures to Google Classroom. I've already been walking around looking at them and they all look really great. So once you are finished, please make sure that you do submit it to Google Classroom and then put your Chromebooks back into the cart on their charging station. Also, whenever you're finished, make sure you turn in your science journals to the front table because I will also be looking at those just to review them and see that you got enough information on your KWL charts and that you wrote down information from outside on our nature walk. So, thank you all so much for participating and being so good in this activity and doing a great job outside. Let's go ahead and clear off our desks once we have everything turned in and get ready for our next lesson. Thank you.